doesn't matter what you do if you don't have a solid foundation, right? Then to throw in meetings or roles kind of doesn't connect. So with that foundation, it kind of makes the balance of what we're going to do pretty straightforward. So we're going to take a look at the political realm. And once we do that, the administrative realm is really easy to do because it's intended to be complementary. So I looked at, for simplicity, in the political realm, there's really three core functions. And you can split those into 1,000, but I like simplicity. So one, council makes policy. You do that every time you're in a meeting. We'll talk about that a little more. Second, nobody else has legitimacy in your community to set the direction, future direction of Lantzville. And third, you do that in an effort to reflect public interest. So with that, worth exploring each of those areas. You make policy every time you do what? How do you make policy? Every time you make a resolution. And how else do you make policy? Bylaw. And you do, in fact, policies as well. In fact, I would argue that every time you also set precedent. So, for example, if you decide that you wouldn't hear somebody, you wouldn't consider something, guess what? You've kind of set an informal policy. We often call it a practice. And so we do that in the way of doing a variety of things. One, we expect, let's pack it. So we expect people to have adequate information, right? So in order to be a good policymaker, what do you need?
Good staff.
Yeah, you need good advice, right? We'll talk more about their role when we get to the administrative realm. So you need good advice, you need good information. What else?
Good debate.
Good debate, good discussion. And we'll talk about discussion versus debate, which is, to me, committee of the whole and committees. Okay. Anything else? Do you need public kind of sense? Right? It might be engagement, involvement, feedback. For me, public, there's all kinds of words, public engagement, is do we want them to know? That's one way. Do we want to hear from them? Input. Do we have something and we want their feedback? Or do we want them involved, right? So there's all kinds of different elements. Now,
maybe it was one of the local governments or something.
Yeah.
Somebody came up with this basically a policy manual of trying to identify that level of public engagement desired on a variety of topics, and they characterized it that way. There were certain things at certain levels where it was just information. In other cases, it was that go back, and I can't remember who or what that was.
I don't know who's. I think the simplicity. I can't think of anybody who's offhand, but I would call it a matrix. So here's the thing about public communication. It's one of the top 5 issues in the country. Unfortunately,
sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Check out Sandwich.
Okay, might be.
Sandwich.
Yeah, because it might have been when Paul was there.
Yeah.
So because we just did a session. Anyway, when we were talking about this with Jan Enns, and Jan Enns is just somebody who does a lot of communication stuff in BC. And so if you could put the nature of your issues on one side, and then you can say, do we want people to be informed? Do we want their input? Do we want feedback? Do we want their involvement? You could kind of, because otherwise we're not aligned. We don't know kind of what people are thinking, and so we can miss the point. But I'll go even further. My point that I was going to make was that often when people discuss this, they say we ought to do a public communication strategy. Well, that's lovely. 3 ways to kill an idea, right? 1, let's do a study. 2, let's form a committee. And 3, let's have a committee to do a study. Anyway, so I'm a contrarian. I think, and we'll see this in a minute, that every time you make a decision, there should be a line there that says, what do you think? How should we communicate? And then we would use our matrix that would say, hey, this is a public information item. It should be a media release or on the website or whatever. And then, we can do that. Just keep it simple. Otherwise, we study, and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so here's the model that I showed you, right? Just kind of, and I'll send you the guidelines, okay, for this, if you like the idea. It's just very simple. We talked about imposed and consensus, finding that place in the middle. And here's the flow chart that I always use. So when we look at a meeting, so here's the meeting. And people often ask me, how do I get anything on the agenda? So how do you get something on the agenda?
Ring up the CEO
Okay.
or the
Okay.
committee and say,
Yeah.
I have an idea.
And by a certain time on a certain day? Okay. So let's say Wednesday by 12 o'clock, you phone up and you get an item on the agenda. Is that okay? Okay, let's try that one. Okay, so what's the expectation? So, Will, you got your item on the agenda. What's the expectation for that will happen at the agenda? Kind of alluded to it earlier.
Be a vote.
Aha. And so, if you bring up, hey, people are looking at alternate energy, and I think we ought to look at wind turbines around. Okay? What are the odds you're going to get a vote?
Little to none.
Well, you may in fact get a vote. That we ought to look at it, or forget it. Okay? But it would perhaps be ill-informed. Okay? Everybody with me? Okay. Now let's imagine we said, let's say you say, let's declare next week Girl Guide Week. We forgot to declare it. What are the odds you can get a vote?
Probably pretty good.
Do people feel reasonably informed?
Writing lots of simple.
So my point is, it's when we don't have adequate information that we would refer it. Okay? Otherwise, everything would kind of keep going around in circles, right? So it depends on the nature. But if we have a principle that I can put it on the agenda, okay, and that my colleagues will look at it and we will refer it to somewhere, okay, and I'll deal with that in a minute. Okay. Now the other is there are items, and so that was an agenda that got in before noon on Wednesday. Remember, there's regular items, an item that's been around, a report. Do you have a standard staff report, Brad?
Yes.
Okay. So that's the item that's been around, that's coming up here. We'll cover that. Now, what about if you're at the meeting? So John, on the way to the meeting, met Mary, Mary, your neighbor, and she said, what are we doing about cleaning the streets? I don't know, something, right? Spring cleanup. And I want to add it to the agenda. Do you meet Monday night? Okay. So Monday night, you meet, and John says, I want to add this to the agenda. Can you do that?
Well, with the consent of the assembly, yeah.
Okay, good. Just good to be clear, right? Because some places they don't allow that. Okay. So why? Why can he do that? What's the principle? Do you think?
The councillor is representative of the population, and that's his right to do so.
Yeah, it's council's agenda. And the reason I say this is because there's really no gatekeeper. In some communities, there's a perception, and in some cases a reality. The mayor controls the meeting, or the CAO controls the meeting, But it's your agenda. That's my point, right? Yeah? Okay. Now, here's the falsehood, though. If I bring up a new item here, and it goes through the CAO, do we expect the CAO to research it so that we have adequate information on your item, Will?
You expect him to look at it for its legal effect, and if he's not sure, to come back and say to you, I think we need to look at this some more. He may have conflicting items that are on the agenda may be too big for that meeting, that there's some other more important things. Lots of things we can come back to.
Yeah. Well, here's the interesting element. How many employees do you have, Council? One.
One.
Okay. How many bosses does the CAO have? One. Okay. So here's the premise. again, we have to use judgment here. But let's imagine that the item coming forward, say, is something that requires, a little bit of a legal advice, doing some research. Who is now directed to the CAO?
Council.
Single council. And the reason I say this is most of us acknowledge, most of us acknowledge that you have one employee. Is that fair? And here's council, and here's the staff. Okay. Now, let's play this out, because I just want to show you how we probably agree with the principle, but we can violate it very easily. So let's try this. That did I spell it right, Denise?
Sure.
Close?
Good enough.
Okay. So, yeah. She's
What's the option?
she's leery because her name's up here now. She's just saying, well,
There's no dot on that.
Yeah. that may or may not be me. Okay. So imagine Denise is out there, and my example is it snowed. Okay. And it snowed, and she lives in a particular area. And Mary wants to know, when is the snow going to get cleared? So, here's Fred. Most would acknowledge I can't talk to a grader operator or an operator. Is that fair? Okay. So is it okay if Denise phones Fred to find out when is that area over here going to get cleared?
In Lantzville or what?
Yeah, no, this is real. This is real time for us.
I think.
Because if we don't have protocols.
I think it's reasonable to call Fred and refer Fred to the resident.
Okay. Well,
In a community like this, that's
Yeah.
reasonable.
But let's just say it's Denise that noticed.
Yeah, so say-
There's
let's-
no resident involved.
yeah,
Okay.
we'll put Mary over here anyway. And I'll deal with Mary. I'm going to put Joe just so it's gender balanced, okay? And because we're going to deal with the complaint next, okay? It's a little different. Okay, here's the principle. Could Joe have phoned Fred to find out when the area is going to get cleared? Right? It's public. In fact, could have even been on the website. That, areas are closed, our service level is 48 hours. Okay? So Fred says exactly what he says. He responds back 48 hours. Okay? And because we are Lantzville, and we got to have some protocols. Okay? But you knew this was a setup. Okay. Now, Denise, being kind of financially astute, right, accounting background, stuff like that, knowing you're going into the budget, and having just gone and listened to the public says, that's too long. One of the big issues, climate change and all that, is it takes too long to get rid of snow, especially now that people have smart cars and all that kind of stuff. So she says, Fred, what would it take for that service time to be cut in half? How much would it cost, Fred? And what would be the cost for the average taxpayer? So we could put, be a case of beer, I don't know, in the winter, like some argument, right? And how would that cost compare to other communities of a similar size in Western Canada? What just happened? But what just physically, what actually just happened there?
Just directed me to actually go get all this research.
It was no longer publicly available information. Is that fair? Okay. It became a work request. And this may be reviewed, but I got to tell you, it's so important because we're going to set priorities by tomorrow. And if we don't have this, then we got all kinds of stuff going on that distracts. Okay. Now, Fred, well, he's been here a long time, so let's use him in a minute. Jeannie's not been here that long. You ask Jeannie, she likes to please, and she's all delighted and new and wants to prove herself. And what does Jeannie do if she gets that kind of request?
She's off researching.
Yep, spends the whole weekend doing it, okay? And now, how many bosses does Jeannie have?
One.
more than one, right? Probably all of council, because word travels, hey, you want to get anything done, phone Jeannie, don't phone Brad, right? Yeah?
I'm loving this meeting,
Yeah.
by the way.
Right? So Jeannie, with no rules of engagement, right, you can see how quickly role confusion begins to occur. Okay, but we have some decorum. And Jeannie is able to have a code that says, remember the code before? We should defer this item was a code to everybody to get out. Let's give Jeannie a code. And the code is, that's a work request. And so now what does that mean to you?
Kind of go to CAO.
Gotta go to the CAO. So let's go to the all-knowing CAO. CAO.
All vibration, all caffeine.
So the CAO, knowing we're right in the middle of budget process, right? Notice I didn't use Fred because Fred's been here 16 years. He knows rules, and he's the guy who said, like, what part of no don't you understand, right? Okay. So Jeannie, now, and hey, we give feedback to staff. So who do we like, Jeannie or Fred? This won't hurt too long, okay, Fred? Who do we like better, Jeannie or Fred?
Jeannie.
Yeah, absolutely. She says, yeah, she's pleasing. And Fred's he's just a roadblock all the time, right? But I just try to give you a quick example how quickly role clarity can get confusing, all well intended, right? It's not evil, it just happens. So we go to the all-knowing CAO, the CAO knowing, hey, contracts are coming up, we're right in the middle of the budget process, and says to Denise, sorry, we can't do that. We're not able to do that. Or, because Brad's a political confidant, knows the budget's coming up, this is a big issue, is a newspaper coverage, says to Fred, hey, Fred, why don't you adjust the work program, delay that contract, whatever it is, and let's get this done. Gets an answer, and of course gives a copy to everybody, not just Denise. Make sense? So, political confidant. But he says no. Now, if you're catching this, Denise has been rejected by Fred. She's been rejected by the CEO this twice, okay? You got a third hit now. Now where does Denise go? Council, right? Often I'll go to the mayor, but guess what? The mayor doesn't have any power, right? So, go to council. Goes to council, and basically you're asking to have a service level researched, right? And that's a council matter. And council says, you know what? Absolutely, we should look at that, provide better service and take a look at it. Directs the CAO, and the CAO then adjusts Fred's work program, works together with Fred to adjust the work program. How we doing? The average counselor will learn to do what? If I have a work request, who do I go to? CAO. The answer is not council, it's actually right here. See, that's why we often get the answer, because imagine now, I'm going to go back to that, imagine if all information requests in Lantzville went through the CAO, what would happen? Right, it potentially gets blocked. So you have to find, now for CAO, you have to be cautious. You don't want a wide mouth mason jar either. You don't want it so tight, right? Because we got to find something that works for Lantzville. And I find just having that decorum, that all staff can say, hey, you know what? It's not one of the priorities that we're going to identify. It's not on a follow-up action list, which we're going to talk about. It's not on my work program. We need to talk to the CAO about it. Or we need to get that to council. Brad?
Sorry, can we just go back to the flip thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
The one concern I have is about the description, which is
Okay.
there's also the point in time where the CAO says yes, and that's the one thing that kind of is missing, or which
Yeah.
is the CAO is the employee of council, and
Yeah.
the CAO should be looking to have to get a win to provide that to council. If we can't
Yeah.
get a win, then that's fine, and we ask you to refer it to the council. But staff are here to serve the public and serve council. And we're trying for that win. And I don't think that's said enough. Is that we're trying to get to that, yes.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate we say sometimes we can't do these things because of our budget
Yeah.
constraints, all these other things. But we are trying to get to a success point for all accounts.
Sure. Yeah, and I think, let's use that example. Your answer could be, no, sorry, we can't do that. Hey, the work program is pretty full. can I help you position that in front of council to see, right? So, that
And that's what I mean by getting a win.
you don't have to agree with it or disagree. Like, you may think, well, geez, really? That's the most stupid thing I ever heard of, right? No, your job is to effectively have it, how can we get that on the council agenda? Your job is the same. We'll talk about yours, but it's coaching, right? Absolutely. We're working. The job of staff, which we'll get to, is to help council be the best it can be. Sometimes that's not very good, but nevertheless, it's to be the best that it can be. That's your job. Absolutely. Now, one more. Is that helpful a little bit? It's just a reminder, maybe. But I got to tell you, if we don't get this, other stuff falls by the wayside. Now, let's do another one. Joe. Okay. Now with Mark. With a C or a K? Okay. Okay. Now, because Joe gets around. Okay. And it's the stop sign on the corner got damaged last night. Mark. Now, what do you do?
What would I do?
Yeah, what would you do?
Either direct Joe or contact Public Works.
Okay. So, you could, there's Fred. Fred's still in the limelight there. So you could just say, Joe, phone Fred. And if you haven't heard back in a day or two or whatever, let me know. Right? That would be, a pretty efficient, right, way to deal with it. But, let's say Bob wants to please people, and wants to be liked and get reelected or whatever. What does Bob do? Bob says, hey, no problem, I'll take care of that for you, Joe. So Mark actually phones Fred directly, okay? What was the difference between, this is a work request, right, to get a stop sign replaced. What was the difference between the two? Any?
Between the two scenarios? Or
Yeah, remember the previous scenario was a service level change, which we kind of bounced
It's just
around.
normal operations.
Yeah, and there is some sense, if we go back to and reverse your point, Brad, it's all of our jobs to be the best that we can be. And we've got lots of eyes out there, and this is a safety issue, right? Right? Now, if I view it that way, Mark is not the culprit. Mark is just the conduit for a concern, right? Because Joe could have done it, or Fred. Everybody with me? Okay, so when it's a complaint, we would not say, oh, geez, I got to talk to the CEO. I got to wait for the next council meeting, right?
Yeah, it's also dependent upon the wording as well.
Sure.
Like when you phone up Fred, you say, there's a stop sign down the street.
But yeah,
I didn't say put it up. I just made him aware of the stop sign.
yeah. Your eyes and ears,
Yeah.
right? And so now here's the thing that happens in a lot of places. So we have this decorum. What can happen is Fred, because Fred's pretty effective and efficient, talks to Joe and gets the stop sign all fixed. Should all be good. What's wrong with this picture?
Mark's not aware of it.
Exactly. And so it was very efficient. Boom, boom. 1 hour it was all done. But effective-wise, remember efficiency, effectiveness, it's important that the loop come back to Mark, right? To let them know that it was taken care of. I'll tell you what, I hear often, when I make an inquiry or complaint, nothing ever happens with it. When I talk to staff, I find out, well, they take care of this stuff. So it's a loop, closing the loop, right? So this is important because when we come back to our chart, it's going to make, hopefully, some connection. Okay, now, so when an item has been baked, it's been around, and staff had time to put information together, I like the idea of a standard format that you have, right? Call whatever you want, staff report, request for decision. This was born out of 3 reasons. 1, not all council reads all the material all the time, unless Lantzville is unique. Okay? So it's a cheat sheet, number 1. So I don't think you would try and run a meeting without an agenda. Probably not. That doesn't work. you know what? This is a mini agenda. On it says, and we'll see if your format's similar, but what's the issue? What's the outcomes? What are we looking for? Options?
Yep.
Options, okay. And then a recommendation. Is that fair?
We're going to go one step even further with
Good.
that, which is based on council's completion of the strategic plan, is we're going to put the alignment for the strategic priorities.
Awesome.
based on the-
Awesome. Very good. Bonus points. Okay. So there is a recommendation right up front, right? It's right there. See, and if it's not from, in your case, probably from the CAO, but I always put CAO in case it came from Jeannie or came from Fred, just to know that they were commenting. So here's the policy. Now, 4 aspects I want to highlight. Just double check. One, and I often hear this, is all 3 recommendations are there. Why?
Because it's not staff's decision, it's council's decision.
So, in this I hear a lot. So this just locates we have good practice, okay? What I often hear is we only get 1 recommendation, 1 option. That either means you're incompetent. No, I didn't look at you that time. Okay. It means you're incompetent, or you're manipulative, right? You didn't do your homework, or hey, you've thought of other options and you only want to give me the one you like. So 3 options is the transparency between admin, right, and then a recommendation. Now, the part that we often miss is the bottom. And that is, you would always expect, to know whether it was within policy, legislation, right, legal. You'd always expect to know whether it was in budget, right? Is that fair? But how many, and now we're going to add, is it aligned? Where does it fit strategically? But here's the 2 that we often miss, and that's where, see the communication? This is a simplified form, right? But how we're going to communicate on this. So if you had the matrix that Colin was talking about, staff could actually say, hey, this fits in our messaging. This fits in our seeking input. But here's the most important one. And that is, how does it fit within the staff work program? It's the one we seldom do. And when I was with the Islands Trust, we had one guy on there who particularly wanted to know how many hours it would take staff to do it. And I encourage you not to do that. I think you have 1 employee. You ask 1 employee, does this fit in the work program? Yes or no? And if it doesn't, what's council's option?
Change priorities.
You have 3 options. Add more resources, temporarily, permanently, make the box bigger. 2, change the priorities, or actually defer the item, right? So now notice we're putting it back in council's. It's not staff saying, sorry, we can't do this. It doesn't fit in the current work program, and then what are the options? Exactly, okay? I think this is the most powerful thing, because, the reality is council was not elected to manage. You have oversight. So, because the minute we say, well, it's going to take staff 50 hours. Well, then, the reality is every councillor has worked for a living. And it's done. Staff, managerial functions. And so it's so easy when we give that kind of, I can't believe it'd take 50 hours. Geez, why wouldn't it take 30? You can see how we kind of dipped into the administrative role. So really, it's your 1 employee giving you some guidance. Okay, so that shows some ideas. It sounds like you got the form. We're going to make some adjustments. Yeah, tweaks. Great. Now, here's the one that I've recently added. What about when staff have no idea what council's smoking?
Which is legal now.
Yeah. So let's use example. Lethbridge. Lethbridge, councillor comes back from a big FCM, Federation of Canadian Municipalities conference in Calgary, and comes back to her colleagues and says, we need to do something about affordable housing. So all of council, they all got their arms like this, right? They're big, husky guys, and they don't even know how to spell social services, But the cameras are going, and they all refer it to staff, okay? Because they didn't want to, not care about affordable housing. So they referred to the CAO. The CAO, being astute, immediately gave it to the planner. That'll be you for now, Jeannie. Okay? So Jeannie's the planner. So the planner's there saying, well, what the heck am I supposed to do with affordable housing? So what does she do? Well, did a massive report on the state of affordable housing. You know, are we talking emergency housing, subsidized housing, market housing, employee housing? Does a big report. Comes out at the end of the diving board. It's swaying with the weight of the report. And all of council looked at her, except for the one person, and said, where the hell did this come from? What's wrong with this picture?
Should have gone back up the ladder and had council specify, you know, what are you smoking? And
Good. Clarity. So I've developed a different one, which is called the council direction request. It's when, now, it's very similar to our other form. And the only reason I like the form is because it's now a mini agenda again. So what's the issue? Right? For example, are we talking social housing? No, that's a provincial responsibility. Are we talking about emergency housing? No, that's an NGO. Are we talking about market housing? Oh yeah, that's the area. Now, do we want to own land, service land, do land use, build houses? Like give us, oh no, we just want to be land use planning. Okay. Notice just, I did that very quickly. We just narrowed down the field, narrowed down. Have we made a decision? No, we just narrowed down the work that needs to be done. And so the staff could come back and now do the RFD, the request for decision, right? And so now, let's go to how that could happen. Do you have committees or committee of the whole?
Committee of the whole, technically, but
Okay. Shall we explore that?
rarely used.
Okay, let's explore it. There are three types of meetings. There's the regular meeting, the business meeting, right? Every second week, every 2 weeks. I call it the D meeting. You debate, you decide, and you hear delegations. You know, because you have to. You have 5 minutes, 10 minutes, bugger off, right? You know, whatever, okay? So it's the D meeting. It's very formal. You have procedures, okay? Now, what's happened over time is that councils, quick history of local government again. It used to be councilors had a portfolio. Bob, you had finance, okay? You had housing, okay? And you had public works. You had a portfolio, okay? And you were, in fact, you directed staff, okay? We modernized local government. We reformed it because what was happening, the production system was getting politics involved. And so we professionalized it and brought in staff now to prepare the production system and remove politicians from the hands-on. Well, what to do with politicians? Well, we create committees. So we create committees. So municipal, right? Public works, municipal services. Community services committee. Finance committee. Everybody with it? Okay. So we created committees and we made you now the chairman of the housing committee, the chairman of the finance committee, the chairman of the public works committee. Okay. Well, why did we create committees? What's the principle?
to report back to council what the hell's happening.
Okay. Any other reasons?
To do the work.
Absolutely.
To do groundwork.
Efficiency, to divvy up the labor, right? So not everybody had to be an expert in everything, so economies of scale and all that.
And then when that goes to the board, the council, or the ruling body,
Yeah,
decisions can be made based on the work that's being
Absolutely.
done by that committee.
absolutely,
As opposed to trying to do that work at the council
Everybody.
table.
absolutely. Theory was good. Well, what happened, right across the country, again, we're generalizing, right? Committees would come forward, and council, the ones who weren't in the committee, would now have the same debate
Yeah.
and open up the whole
Yeah.
can. So it wasn't very efficient. Or, we didn't like what they came up with. We didn't, in fact, like the people on the committee. Okay, so lots of different reasons. It was no longer, remember, committee system was meant to be more efficient, okay? But it wasn't necessarily effective. So what's happened again across the country over the last 5 years, and again we're generalizing, right? 4,000 communities across the country. Many have blown up the committee system and dismantled it, got rid of it, in favor of committee of the whole. So what's a committee of the whole? Well, guess what? It's an advisory committee. It advises. So there's committee of the whole, right? It does it have decision-making authority? Does a committee have decision-making authority?
No.
Well, it doesn't. Okay, so it's really advising council. It's kind of an interesting phenomenon, don't you think? One hand, we sit as an advisory committee to advise the same people when they sit over here. So what happened now is that Committee of the Wholes became a dress rehearsal for the business meeting, which unfortunately violated the effectiveness principle, because people were expecting the debate and discussion to occur in the regular meeting, but it actually occurred now in the Committee of the Whole. Everybody with me?
Or it occurred in both.
Or both, which is not very efficient, right? So, unfortunately, what's happened, and again, that's a very quick little snapshot, is many have thrown out Committee of the Whole. So they don't have committees, they don't have Committee of the Whole, and so now they have no place where they can talk about values, beliefs, vision, just kind of chat about stuff. So, it reminds us to revisit why Committee of the Whole, what the purpose would be. So, Committee of the Whole then is for strategy, right? Emerging issues, so that's where the run of the river comes up, and why don't we just chat about that? Like, why don't we invite somebody in to find out more about run of the river projects? Like Whistler's just doing one right now. That's kind of cool, or wind power, let's talk to so-and-so. Let's talk to Tumbler Ridge, what they did. So we're sharing information. We're talking about emerging strategies, so staff now know affordable housing, for example, get some idea. So if a regular meeting is for decisions, a committee of the whole is for direction, right? Getting a sense of direction. So it's the S meeting, sharing, strategies in progress, like something major that you're working on, or emerging strategies. Now, there's one more meeting called the in-camera, and I think we know the L's, land, legal, labor. I'm going to show you one more called laundry. That'll be a little later. Okay? So land, legal, labor. Now, here's the challenge, which we sort of alluded to earlier, is when a council wants to talk wind turbines, what imagine? Oh, is that a hill back there? Wow. What about if we put wind turbines up there? We're just kind of blue skying, Next day, wing nuts. Think of wind turbines on Pristine Hill or whatever, right? So this is the dilemma across the country. Where do we do strategy thinking, just blowing it out, when we have no provisions to go in camera for doing that? Does that make good sense? Okay? Because it really doesn't fall under land, legal, labor. Okay? So that's the dilemma. So for many, then, they're just learning to have strategy sessions in the public, or for many, they're trying to call them strategic retreats, or they're calling them a different name, and dealing with the public in different ways. So that's kind of the lay of the land for committees. Does that help a bit? Because if you have committee of the whole, like we're going to establish some priorities. If you want to discuss alignment or emerging issues or in progress, committee of the whole is really ideal. It's a little more informal, right? Yeah.
I think it is the perfect venue for all of those discussions.
Yeah, and it can be public.
It builds into this concept that's constantly floated about transparency and accountability.
Yep.
It feeds that transparency and accountability. The fact that people might misconstrue what is being discussed as a fait accompli is not really, either that's a reflection of poor communication on the part of the organisation, or it's something that you have to live with, that you can't do anything about. What happens when you have the whole committee work taking place in a council meeting is that often you end up with that embarrassing situation where, it's that cross debate is going on, but it's not really debate because you don't have all the information necessarily.
Yeah.
Or, you know, it takes out that messiness. And, you know, councillors have to understand that part of their responsibility in a public meeting is to debate.
Yeah.
You know, so I get that sometimes you get the argument, the debate taking place in both venues, but my question is, what's wrong with that? It may be perceived as a bit messy, a bit less efficient, but it's no less efficient than, say, having 2 council meetings a month, where, you know, that information is hashed and rehashed, sent to staff, and then it comes back to be rehashed again.
Well, again, it depends what you're doing.
Yeah, and absolutely, it depends on the subject matter, the intensity or the breadth of the subject, or the depth of a subject matter.
It depends on the prompt, I think. I think if you're, here's my thinking, if you're using a request for decision in a committee of the whole, I think you're
asking for trouble.
Well, there's no trouble legally. I just think you're using the wrong vehicle.
No, I meant politically.
But if you're using a request for direction, what it does is there is no recommendation, so it keeps you out of trouble. You know, you're actually just using it for the direction.
And it demonstrates the decision-making process.
If you're clear.
Because it's a process. Yeah. The actual decision is made somewhere else, but it has to be supported with something.
Right. So let's use back to affordable housing. We were talking about market housing, and council's primarily interested in the district's role relative to land use, land development. That was it. Now staff can go and look at what's Langford doing, and you'll come back with a full report. You didn't say we're only going to do land regulate. You know, you weren't that definitive, right? You're just trying to provide some scope. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, I've worked with groups where there's been a committee of the whole. Like Lantzville, when we first started with a committee of the whole model, which became just a dress rehearsal for everything.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't efficient because everybody just went over the same things again in the council meeting. So we switched to a 2 council meeting model.
Sure.
And if it's a case where you're not, as you vet things through, yes, it's sounding more like a discussion generally as opposed to decision making. But that's where we got to defer this because we need more information.
Yeah.
The regional district works on a committee of the whole versus business meeting type of thing. So the first meeting of the month, committee of the whole.
Right.
And that one is not a dress rehearsal.
Right.
Just effectively the way the organization has run it over the years. The committee of the whole is that opportunity, discussion, that sort of thing. And people respect that that's their time to say it.
Yeah.
So what you get is maybe some additional reflection between that and the business meeting, but you don't get a rehash of it.
Yeah.
But it's something that's developed over a lot of time, and the respect for that structure.
Well,
one last thing. The other aspect that some people were using the committee of the whole for before here was, you mentioned those people that don't read the agenda.
Right.
So they haven't done their homework before they go into the committee of the whole, and they get a chance to read it between that and the business meeting, and all of a sudden they're raising all these points in the business meeting, and we're kind of like, where the heck were you 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
So it goes back to the people.
Yeah.
And realistically, no matter what label we put on it, it doesn't really matter.
Well, yeah. I mean, some have, because it's been used, have relabeled it and they call it a strategy set. Like people are now not calling them committee of the whole, they're calling them something else. So point being, now some, there's different avenues. Some say, well, heck, I'm hoping by the time we're finished tomorrow, you're going to see the need to be strategic, right? And have that time to be strategic, which often is outside the business meeting. Let's assume you get there. Well, and everybody's looking at each other saying, hell, we don't want another meeting. We already got 2. We don't want 3 a month, right? So people are doing it different ways. What they're doing is, let's say you have 2 meetings. Sorry, that wasn't a very good meeting. So there's your regular meeting, and there's your regular meeting. Well, some have a meeting like that, right? Committee of the whole or some facsimile thereof. And people say, well, we don't want to have that, so we don't want that. That's a shame, right, if we don't have that informal time. So what some do is they have it here as part of a regular meeting. Just they carve out an hour. The key is that this item never can go to that meeting.
Right.
It only is for staff to be able to prepare for the next meeting. So there's different ways, yeah. So it might be, we always have committee of the whole before, an hour before, and we take one topic. So it's going to be affordable housing, okay? So a couple ideas there. So point being, if you have committee of the whole, and we can revisit some of these later, because then you would have an agenda. Yeah. Oh, sorry, Josh.
Yeah, I get the whole intent of the discussion for that format, but how do you appeal the debate out of that? Because what I found over the last year is you often have to debate to get the committee to accept the recommendation to pass it through the council where you have the debate.
Well, and that's a dress rehearsal, and I think that sucks. Yeah, so if you go back to here, mini agenda. Almost the same format. What's the topic? What are the outcomes? What are the options we're prepared to look at? There's no recommendation here. But see, if I start saying this is what we like and recommending to ourselves, then I think you've had a dress rehearsal then. So the items coming to this meeting, if you kind of buying into any of this, would be for the benefit of providing direction to staff so they're not wasting time bringing us back material. And for us to be aligned ourselves, right? That would be the purpose of narrowing down the work to be done, but not narrowing it down to the recommendation. I mean, you think about it. We all sat here and we recommend this to council. 2 weeks later, the same group sits down in your council. And I hear the argument that, well, it allows for sober thought, right? It allows for you to go and talk to your public, and then whatever we did here is a wasted effort because everybody changes their mind by the time they get, whatever. Right?
I think for me, if the committee of the whole had the definitions like you showed there, that makes sense to me. It's more big picture, that sort of aspect. But a lot of them just say, okay, here's our council agenda for 4 weeks from now. Let's discuss it in the committee of the whole.
So you'd have an agenda that would just say emerging strategy, new items, current strategies that need to be discussed, and information, sharing information, right?
And a DP on the waterfront for one seawall doesn't seem to fit any of those, whereas previously that was showing up on the agendas, and that's where the dress rehearsal side.
And that's why a lot of people have got rid of everything. So if we're looking at efficiency, effectiveness, they've lost the effectiveness of just sitting down and having a discussion with each other, right?
So does that not come more beneficial when we start providing council with information reports, which is, it's not for a decision, which is, for instance, with the DP, which is what we provide to council, which is, here's the information. Should council wish to make a motion later or a request for these things, et cetera, and they've got that second sober thought time, we haven't put another meeting in play of the committee of the whole and allows them to discuss it without making a decision. I'm just throwing it out there.
Just using that example, are you using DPs generally or specific to property A?
Right.
Because if it's property A, people are already kind of determining their direction during that committee of the whole, if that's on there, versus, say, the policy of how DPs, whether they can be grouped together or charged for separately. That's a broader policy type thing. So that I could see being the committee of the whole versus property A.
No, I agree with that.
Yeah. Again, if you're buying into the committee of the whole, it's to provide direction. So we're not clear ourselves, or council or staff can request it on. We're not clear where you're heading with this, right? Give us some guidance. And the whole purpose is we're a small organization. Nobody wants to waste effort studying stuff when we don't have to, right? Just kind of narrowing it down. Right? Now, one more item. We just covered committees. The other item that I hear the most is whatever happened with that item. Went into the black hole, never to be seen again, right? So that conjures up two notions. One, staff forgot about it, which suggests incompetence, or they're hoping we forget about it, which, okay, either one. So these are simple things. Remember, alignment produces confidence. So if we have like a staff report format that's always consistent, that gives us confidence in staff. if we have a format that allows council to be consistent in providing direction, it gives staff confidence in council. Okay. Now, so I'm a believer in a little like, yeah.
I don't know whether it's something that councils in general follow or this council would consider, but a tracking form is
Oh,
often.
there you are.
Oh.
Yeah, very good, very good. So what you do is, well, here's the thing. Imagine, we're going to get there. I'm just doing kind of, but we're going to end up one page, right, with council priorities and operational priorities. We'll get there. Okay, we're going to have one page. It's like a dashboard. Okay. Mm-hmm. So, Councillor Mark has an item. And he knows there's no way it's going to make it as a big priority item. You're a pretty astute guy. But you don't think, it wouldn't take that long. You know, staff could do this in half an hour. So if we actually kept a list, not of the big ticket items, just the little items, you know, wouldn't take long. You know, got a neighbor who could do it in half an hour. If I was doing it, it would only take 20 minutes. Right? So what's happening is these little items, they're little, they're not big strategic items. Where will staff spend most of their time? Staff like to please, get some quick wins, make you happy, make you happy, make you happy. Hey, that's okay. So if we're going to work on here, where does that time come from? It comes from being strategic. That's why this is so important, right? It's going to come from day to day, or the killer, personal time. So having a simple tracking system now. Imagine Mark brought up this idea. You were in a roof, a facility roof. You have a hall of some sort, community facility. Okay. I hear the roof leaks. Okay. I bring it up in a meeting. We need somebody to go over and investigate. Okay. So the next day, the CAO and staff sit down and they produce a list that says hall roof inspection, Fred, by January. How you feeling? How you feeling, Mark? You brought it up. How you feeling? You see a list that says it's going to be done. How you feeling? Good or bad?
We'll say good.
Yeah, that's a good answer. Well, I've been heard. It's being followed up. I feel okay. I may not like the date. I thought it should have been December 22nd, which I can talk to the CAO about. But now here's the thing. I know it's going to be taken care of. I don't have to go in the kitchen now and ask for it. I know. Okay? Remember that before? When, I forget who it was now, but let's say Bob. When Bob asked for something, Fred can say, it's not on the follow-up action list. It's not on the strategy chart. It's not on day-to-day. Better go talk to the CAO. See, we're giving them the tools to play with. Now imagine this comes back at the next meeting. Notice it's a simpler tickler list, right? It's like simple, 5 words or less. People often say, well, we have a motion tracking system. Yeah, right. Okay. You know, that's so burdensome. Like, this is just a quick list. Because when council can see a list like this with dates on it, notice it's a barometer. It's like a United Way barometer. And if council, I had 26 elected officials, we knew when this got beyond one page without changing the font size, right, we're in trouble. Everybody, over time, you will know this is detracting. But these are important things that come up from the public, right, that you're bringing. So we attend to them. Now, imagine next meeting, Brad brings it forward. It's probably the second item after the minutes. Brad says, hey, we got this done, we got this done, we got that done. This got delayed. We didn't hear back from the regional district. We didn't hear back from the province. Jeannie's brand new, didn't know the procedure, whatever. Okay? How do you feel?
Good.
Yeah, I feel informed, right? These are all confidence built. So I don't have to worry, because see, often what I hear from staff, if only council knew everything we did. And I was telling them, be careful what you wish for. If council knew everything you did, that would mean they were in the kitchen with you, right? But this is like the little things that are important to you, kind of little tickler list. Okay? Do you do something like that now?
Well, staff are trying to build a couple of new functions.
Good.
One of which is there's a lot of reports that said they were going to be done.
Yeah.
They didn't get done.
Yeah.
council, much like the conversation
Yeah.
you just had with Mark, that want where to go.
Yeah.
So we want to start putting that forward on the CAO quarterly report, that not only this is what the CAO has been up to, et cetera, but here's a list of the reports, here's the progress of the reports, and so that's going to be built into the
Right.
report in January.
Now, one of the things that on reports, again, just trying to give you lots of ideas. We're a small organization. City of Whitehorse had activity reports. They had 12 departments. On average, each department spent an hour doing it, and 12 times they got August off. 11 months of the year. Do the math. So I asked council, "Do you read these?" We were having a spiritual moment, and everybody said no. So we thought about this, right? But we still want to keep a line to keep it informed. So we developed what was called a 3x3 chart. Each department, 3 things you've done, you're proud of, 3 things you're working on that council should be aware of, and 3 things that are coming up. And so it just kept changing, and so it kept council informed, because otherwise we end up with what I call busyness reports, how busy we are, right? Now, those are important only if council does not have confidence in admin. But if we have confidence, hey, we just need to know the highlights, right? So a couple ideas, a follow-up action list. I'm big on 1 pages, right? Just one simple page, name, date, boom, and we're bringing up every council meeting it's there, and it's just kind of moving, and you get to see things that are moving through. Because I'll tell you, when we do priorities, they will move at glacial speeds, right? These big ticket items that you're going to be addressing today, tomorrow, they're going to be moving like this. And these are the little things that can happen that you can respond to your public with, and these things are important, right? So, okay. Some ideas?
What are horse holding leases?
Oh, yeah, this must be Yellowhead County. Yeah, they had actually lease areas where you could have horses at large.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, on Crown land. Yeah. So they wild horses. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Okay. Setting direction. I'm not going to spend too much time. I got a whole bunch of stuff here. I'm just going to breeze through it because you know what? We're going to spend a day and a half doing it. Okay. Very quickly then, you're the people who provide direction. Often, I think we've generally got people. Mike Harcourt, when we were doing a session with him, he said, I think people have visioning fatigue. What happened is everybody had to do a sustainability plan to get the gas tax money. An ICSP, MSP, whatever we call it. So everybody went out and did one as quickly as possible or stole it from somewhere else and ended up with something that is of little use. So broad you can drive a truck through it, or so big, right? So it's kind of unfortunately given visioning a bad name. So one example, Prince Rupert. Prince Rupert, fishing industries in tank, forestry in tank. Buy a house there, I think, for $30,000. Late 80s, early 80s. And they did a strategic plan, typical strategic plan. Nothing changed. They had a vision, mission, goals. And anyway, it didn't work, didn't do anything. And then they went through another process, which I would call passion vision. Like really thinking about stuff, really being creative, right? And thinking about. So they looked across the ocean, right? They saw China, the growing need for commodities. They looked at over there and they saw forestry, wheat, and coal, and all that kind of stuff, and said, you know what? We've got a deep sea port. We're going to be the lowest cost deep sea port on the west side of North America. Everybody's probably wondering, what the heck are they smoking up there? But what they did was the passion of it, working with First Nations, working with shippers, working with CN Rail. Today, Walmart can get its product through Prince Rupert to Chicago half the time and half the price going through any port on the West Coast. That's the power of the vision. Unfortunately, a lot of our visions just become become statements, little trite statements. I did a session with a bunch of mayors and wardens. In Nova Scotia, they call their wardens because they're wards, but anyway. Kind of interesting term. Anyway, so we're doing the session, the strategic role of the chief elected official. They all came in with their strategic plans. They all came from, you can see the pictures on the side and, lingo and stuff like that. So I had them cut out their vision statement, their mission statement, and their goal statements. And I put them in a bucket, and I asked them to go find theirs. What happened? Nobody moved. Nobody moved. A, they didn't know them. And, hey, you can always say economic viability, fiscal responsibility, environmental stewardship, healthy active lifestyles. Did I get them all, Mark, in yours? No. Anyway, close, right? Oh, okay. Hey, 4,000 communities in the country, you can only say those so many ways before they all begin to look the same, right? So the idea then, there's the Prince Rupert, is how do we create something more focused, more strategic, right? Sort of really getting to what we call priorities. The second aspect, so not dissing a vision, just saying you have to take the vision, you actually have to get really targeted. Second is they have to be realistic. Too many plans say their aspirations, I want to do this, I want to do this, and everybody's looking at, like staff are looking at each other and saying, well, where are the resources for it, right? So we, tomorrow, we're going to make sure that every priority we walk out of here tomorrow, we've got the resources, political will, legislative power, we're going to make sure we can do it. I work on simple language. What are we doing now? 2016, next, 2017, later, right? Now, next, later. Forget the mumble jumble. So we'll do a little more of this later. So I remember going into Calgary after Nancy was elected, our first Muslim mayor in Canada, bringing back government to the people and stuff like that. And they asked me, they said, Gord, we don't need you to help us set priorities, we just want to develop strategies. I said, oh, okay. Anyway, they had 19 priorities. I don't care what size you are. I'm a believer, you're getting more than 5 priorities, you probably have too many. Last point, I think if you can't get them on one page, then, I mean, who walks around with a book, right? So where is it that we've got this, and this is actually, it's a staff's desk. And that's the one page of priorities. It kind of looks like this. I'll cover this in a minute, okay? That's what it looks like. And it's sitting right in front of the staff. What does that tell you? It's there, right? Yeah, strategic plans, I mean, typically they sit on a shelf, right? So there it is. Are we on the same page? So what does that look like? Well, this is where we're going tomorrow, so it's kind of a quick overview. We're going to try and get you to your big 5. I'm a believer probably 5. Could even be 3, depends. But with the big 5. Now imagine that. Will doesn't get his. Like he's not able to get his big priority or his big project up. So what might Will do if he lived in Saskatchewan? What might he do in order to get his project advanced? What do you think he might do? Yeah, leave. Well, sometimes when people just give up, right? They kind of disengage. Remember we talked about personality? Use some personality aspects. Here's my premise. If we know that mine is just hovering there, I think this is Dawson Creek, yeah. Let's say yours is that corridor plan. I see mine's just hovering there. I don't have to have a group hug over the big 5. But guess what? If I help get one of those done, what happens to mine? It'll move up. See, so it changes our psychology, and this is where we're going to get to tomorrow. Now, next, later. Hey, I didn't get mine on the big 5, the big thing that I want to do. But hey, if I work together to help get it done, and I'm a believer in the system, because I'll tell you what, this will only last so long, right? That's why you got to review it all the time, because I'm a believer until the day we get one done and mine doesn't move up, right? So you guys, now, the other thing is the council priority is in one of the staff boxes. And so using airport sustainability, we see it's in the CAO's box. What does that tell us? Council box, CAO box. What does that tell us? We're in line. Very good. Okay? So, and we can see, it's all, they're all aligned somewhere. But the reality is staff are not only working on council priorities, they got some other big ticket items, right? You've got some major projects you're working on. You've got tangible, say the asset management system that's behind the 8 ball or whatever. And so they're letting you know that there are some pretty strategic items that we're working on. What does that tell us? Why is that important? Capacity, right? And it's also confidence that, hey, some things are happening in there and I don't need to go in the kitchen. So notice we got 2 single pages down. We've got the follow-up action list, if you like the idea, and you got the 1-page chart, okay? So it's an ongoing process, and, a lot of times the product becomes the end, we've got a plan. But it's ongoing, right? It's got to be, and I'm going to show you that tomorrow. Okay, now let's. I'm just going to move forward. Let's take a look at the mayor's role. Okay, the councillor's role. I think we're kind of getting it, right? What's our councillor's role? Let's go back to a councillor's role before we do the mayor. So, what's a councillor's role? What's the role of a councillor? Now, given everything we've just talked about. What responsibilities do they have?
A counselor? Or
Yeah, counselor.
Counselor.
Yeah. Given council's role, public, right, policy, strategy, public interest, what's a counselor's responsibility, just generally speaking? What do you think are some of your responsibilities?
Represent the people.
Yeah, represent the public, okay. And that, there's nothing that says, I cannot represent a vested interest, right? I can come on behalf of the arts group and advocate, and then when I sit down, what's my role?
Open mind.
Public interest, right? So a lot of times people get confused that I have every right and obligation to represent vested interests. It's not a dirty word. But when I sit down, I now have a council hat on. Right? It's kind of so we're switching all the time. What else? Other responsibilities does a counselor have?
Listen to the other opinions.
Yeah, very good. Respect, listen, both verbal and nonverbal. That kind of stuff, yeah. Or that kind of, body language and listening. Okay. What else?
To verbalize why you're making the decisions you're making.
Okay, so to share your opinions. I mean, the worst thing is not knowing how somebody feels, right? So, and that's okay to voice them in public. You just have to be careful to show you're still open to, have an open mind. Absolutely. What else?
Well, to stay within the law.
Okay, making sure personally I stay within the law, and also I have an
as an
obligation
entity to understand your responsibilities
absolutely.
and
Yeah.
your obligations
Yeah.
as an
Council.
elected member.
So both, which means either I know it or I need to ask for advice. If I'm not I don't have to be a legal expert. Okay, what else?
I always thought board governance, you hear that a lot. Just
Yeah.
take down to 2 things: common sense and due diligence.
Yeah. And, hopefully we've covered it a little bit, the reality that you have one employee, right? So we talked a little bit about sort of that respect for, the decorum, the political administrative decorum. We talked about decision making, your responsibility to read, be prepared. I mean, the worst thing that we often see is people, a counselor doing research and then loading it on at the last minute to colleagues. Oh, but I just read this report. Nobody's seen it, right? Staff hasn't seen it. To share information. Because some people have more time, right? To Google stuff and research stuff. Okay. So,
I guess one
yeah.
thing, I'm not exactly, I haven't quite figured out how to verbalize
Yeah.
it, but basically to support and implement council's decisions, to run with it once the decision's made, Respect the process and the decision.
Yeah, that's a good one, because we haven't talked too much about that. See, when I see that, I may back a little bit to what Colin was saying. When I see what we might perceive as disrespectful behavior, I can't believe the turkeys made that decision. I will fight it tooth and nail, to revisit it and defeat it. It disrespects the institution.
Democracy.
But then if you actually look at it and find out they didn't think all the information was available, the debate, they didn't feel heard. See, let's go back to your point. What was the symptom, right? So I believe if you work with the principle of adequate information and good debate, you can play a different message. I understand the will of council and will monitor my concern over long-term fiscal impact. Right? It's respectful. It's not like the vote changed your concern, right? So you can say it in a respectful way. Absolutely. But when I see that's not happening, usually there's a symptom, right? There's something underneath. Yeah.
Whereas some people take it to mean that once council makes a decision, they have to completely embrace and promote it.
Right.
Correct.
Whereas when it comes to what those concerns are, in some cases it's legality.
Yeah. Yeah, well, if that's the case, yeah.
Or lack of public consultation.
Yeah. And there's just so many examples that after I come in, we unpacked it and realized there was a trigger way back here, right? Around consultation or lack of a legal opinion or whatever it happened to be.
My frustration has been over the last few years is when people get elected, they get this godlike mentality. I was elected, so I can force my decision on the community and the residents. They seem to lack that. We still have our obligation to represent the community, which is where I get frustrated with the corporation at all costs. We seem to lose where are the residents in this process? Where are their needs and concerns heard? And that's been kind of a void, which is where I get frustrated.
Well, but everybody has, it's values. Everybody has different values, different approaches to things, that sort of an aspect. For me, it's more about the case of, has that discussion occurred? Not necessarily with the residents, but even that consultation discussion, has that occurred? The reality is you come up with different opinions, and sometimes it's 5-2, sometimes 6-1, or whatever. But if the discussion has occurred with adequate information, not full information, because you'll never have full.
Never be perfect,
then I wouldn't necessarily say you have to support directly council's decision, but you have to respect it.
Respect it and not thwart it or sabotage it, those kind of things. So the idea, though, then comes back, where early in the process did we talk about how we're going to engage? So the idea of having the RFD or even the direction request saying, this is a matter that requires this kind of public engagement. That matrix would be cool, right?
Actually, this sandwich, by the way.
Yeah, it is actually cool. Hey, find two places, then it's research, right? One, it's plagiarism. So if we had that, very early, I can just think of so many bad examples, things gone bad, when the trigger was way back here and it just frustrated and kind of built up. Yeah. So the public interest. Okay. So let's talk about the mayor. We operate in what's called, read that article. This is 2 elections ago. What would your impression be?
Go ahead, say the weak mayor model. Go ahead, say it.
Yeah. But this is the opposite. After huge wins, the mayors of Vancouver and Surrey shared their priorities. So who's in charge? Yeah. So 70% of the world actually operates in what we call the strong mayor system. We operate in what we call the council manager system, aka the weak mayor system, right? And the best. So the question then is, what power does the mayor have, if any?
I can declare a state of emergency.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
I can bring matter back for reconsideration.
Yeah.
Outside of that, I'm neutered.
Well, no, you have the same powers as any councillor.
Yeah.
Collective.
Yeah.
Well, in fact, the best term I've ever heard, you may have heard it before, but I just love it, first among peers. A mayor is the first, absolutely, very good. You get another extra muffin. One, leadership.
Gluten.
Yeah, leadership, right? Gluten-free. It's about influence, right? The mayor chairs meetings. The mayor is the interface in the hourglass between council and administration, often with the CEO, and is also the spokesperson for council. Right? So those are kind of fundamentally the three roles. So if they don't have much authority, how do they get the power? So I put three mayors up here. Yeah. Two of them are has-beens, or three of them are has-beens, actually. I got to refresh. We have Nenshi, who got his power or influence. Where does he get his influence from, his power? Nenshi of Calgary. 70% approval rating after the floods of Calgary. From people. He's a populist, what we call a populist mayor. Ford, I put Ford in there because, notwithstanding all the other shenanigans, he was a populist mayor as well. Just two different agendas. One was transparency, and the other one was right-sizing Toronto, right? And actually, the textbooks will show that he actually did that. He actually, after he was there, not sticking up for him, but the budget was 1.5% for the city of Toronto, which is like bigger than 5 provinces in Canada. That's amazing, right? So they get their strength. Peter Kelly, mayor of Halifax, he got his power actually with administration. So one is the populace, right, getting power, at large. But Peter Kelly got his power with administration because he was a champion for administration, worked closely with them, they'd do anything for him. So his influence, if you will, was administrative. Diane Watts is an interesting one. I remember doing their session in Hope, and at that time she was elected from one party, and all the rest of the council was another party. And it was the power of a vision for Surrey that actually brought them all together. And it was called, it was about the heart of Surrey. And the heart of Surrey was there is no center, but it was a metaphor for trying to reignite pride, right? So, just different ways that mayors actually have power. They have their chair, a spokesperson, but they're actually really a mentor, right? They're a liaison. They get their influence a lot of different ways. So very quickly, the chair. Got to work with me on this sometimes. The interface, right in the hourglass. And here's one just for you, Colin. Spokesperson.
I'm not getting you a trumpet call.
Oh, come on.
Or wings.
So how do you think a mayor's role might conflict with a councillor? How might the role of a mayor or a councillor conflict with each other? Do you think of any?
Sure, if there's a controversial issue out there and the councillor wants to go one way, but the mayor has to represent the vote of council.
Yeah.
And so they could be arguing two different perspectives.
Yeah, they're two individuals, so they could actually have two different viewpoints.
Yeah.
And sometimes mayors feel like they're kind of neutralized because they're the chair, right? So step out, but they're still a person. But when they speak about their personal view, how do people see it?
As representation.
As representation. So it's an awkward world for a mayor to be able to express their political viewpoint when their role is to be the spokesperson for council.
But they can though.
And they can, they do. It's called the Charter of Rights, right? Often we'll hear, often when I do sessions like this, somebody will say, after a vote is taken, all councillors should be saying the same thing, right? And so no councillor should say anything bad or divisive about the decision. Well, there's a thing, as we all know, called the Charter of Rights that says anybody can express themselves. So it's not a question of if, it's a question of how.
Yeah, I mean, you're asked what your opinion is. Sometimes it's before a vote, at which point you say, well, this is my opinion, however, it's a decision of council, etc.
Right.
After the vote, you can still express your opinion.
Just like a councillor.
Then you say, well, I respect the vote of council.
Yeah, exactly. It's a question of how.
And
Yeah.
whereas there are people that believe that that you're not entitled to have an opinion,
Yeah.
that you represent the will of council.
You're a neutral chair.
Yeah, which isn't true. It's all in the delivery.
Yeah.
itself.
But Colin, that's why I think it was at the last meeting where we were in the midst of a discussion or debate. And I wanted to hear yours because you want to wait to the end, and I want to know in the middle so that I can take it into consideration.
And I do wait to the end because there's there was a meeting many years ago where I wouldn't say lost track of what I was doing or whatever, but I got into the debate to the point where it was a debate between me and a councillor.
Right.
Not one specific councillor, but whatever the issue was, I don't remember what it was, a councillor would express it and I would respond. A councillor would express and I would respond. So in order to avoid that, I will typically wait to the end. And I do appreciate that you asked that, as opposed to at the very end itself. But it's part of that perception that comes in. And like I said, there was one specific meeting where I got it, and that was my flaw in that meeting.
Yeah. Well, on the other hand, there's mayors who will start off the debate with their view. With the notion, their perception, right? That now they're kind of trying to lead the pack. So the point is, it's a difficult role to both be the objective chairperson, yet I'm elected at large and have an opinion. And in a regional district, I'm elected from a ward and have I have an electorate to respond to, so it's an awkward one.
But even at the regional district table, you mentioned the multiple hats.
Yeah.
The reality is, it's the public interest of the region that you should be thinking of.
Absolutely.
Notionally sweet.
But the reality is, there's people from electoral area A that, and this is where I don't think unified systems understand fragmented systems. So unified at large and a fragmented system. If I'm elected at large and I come from the sports community or business community, that's great. I can represent that kind of view, but I have no obligation. But when I'm elected from that ward, I have almost like a recall. I have a thread that's very different. And I think it makes getting united in a regional district often more difficult.
A little more challenging.
A little more challenging, right? That's all. Another one might be, as chair, I need you speaking for the 5th time. And you feel real passionate about something. So I might have to actually, in the effort of being efficient in the meeting, have to kind of shut you down, right? To close off the debate. Mayors are at large. And so I might be able, I might be more frequently in the office. So somebody comes, I take care of them, but they were actually maybe a constituent of yours, whether officially or not, So I've just attended to somebody that you had a kind of alliance to. So there are areas where the roles can kind of overlap and collide a little bit. Okay. So I think that's it for the political round. Does that sound okay?
Can I just mention one other thing? There's been a couple of motions that have come. There's Will's, yours regarding the church, and Bob, yours regarding water. The fact that recognizing running it through Brad, that sort of thing, or running it through me, I just want people to know that when you do that, when I make recommendations on changes to the motion, maybe you should word it this way. It's not to get my way on that motion. It's because my role is also, and this is separate from the political, what my own views are, is to get the council members' objective or their initiative onto the council table so that that's where that discussion can happen. When it comes to that, it may come to the council table and I may speak against it. Yeah. Because my role isn't to vet whether it's right or wrong in my viewpoint ahead of time. It's to get it clear. Yeah. Yeah. That's the mentor role, right? How do I help you position your item to present it to council? Or to judge success of it. And then it's I think that maybe it passed if this happens. Yeah, and again, it's a delicate role because there are some mayors who actually control the agenda and say, hey, that item's not going, until
2 months from now, and so it creates that, it's divisiveness, right? Whole point being is roles overlap, and they will collide. And as you're going to see, and building up, we need a check-in every once in a while. I'll give you an example. Mayor of Okotoks from some time ago. They were doing a check-in that I'm advancing, right, that we'll get to. And they did the what works well, and finally, and then they said, well, we never know what the hell the mayor's doing. Mayor's flitting all over the place, having wine and cheese receptions, and getting free lunches, and we never know. Yeah.
I didn't get that.
Who would have known, right? Yeah. And, and we never know what you're doing. So the mayor got pretty defensive and got his diary and threw it across the table. Hit the other person in the chest with his diary. We're going downhill real fast, right? It was not pretty. Well, the point was that the mayor is the spokesperson. He's out there doing all kinds of stuff. And how would it be possible for all of council to know all the discussions and everything the mayor was doing? So we talked about it, and that's the point, to talk about it, and we built some decorum. And the decorum was, when the mayor is somewhere that affects policy, remember our first role of council? When the mayor is somewhere that affects strategy, remember number 2? When the mayor is somewhere that affects budget, number 3, or when the mayor is somewhere, and if councillors read about it in shock and awe the next day, it's called the principle of no surprise. He might have wanted, he or she, might have wanted to let their colleagues know. So what we're trying to find is some guidance on how to keep informed. It's like the activity reports, right? How big do they have to be? And just provide, but there's an example. They developed that decorum, and then, but notice what was happening there. It was festering, and it was beginning to be a camp of councillors that didn't like the way the mayor was going. They felt out of the picture, they felt jilted and stuff like that. So you can see that sentiment just festers and affects everything you do. Right?
But also keep in mind it works both ways as well, because council members are sometimes at things as
well.
Well,
let's do the reverse. And that's councillor on outreach with another committee, right? And we talk about wearing 2 hats. Because let's say you get appointed to liaise with the seniors lodge, or do you have an example of where you liaise? You're the Chamber of Commerce to somebody.
Seaside.
Okay. Yeah, but this is where often we kind of institutionalize confusion around wearing 2 hats, right? So we've actually sent somebody over there. What happens is quickly is sometimes this group thinks you're their advocate, right? Mm-hmm. So you're the liaison, and so they have a recommendation to go to council, and so they expect you to present it. So what happens? Well, what happens is when you present it to your colleagues, they're thinking what?
That you're in agreement.
You're in agreement, right? And you sit down and you vote against it. So the problem is here that we've created role confusion. You can only represent council. You can't wear 2 hats in this sense. And so we often say that's why you shouldn't belong to the executive of any body that deals with council, right? Because the notion of wearing 2 hats. So you need to be clear. The reverse is true now. Let's say we have a waste commission, okay? Or an intergovernmental 3 or 4 parties. Do we have one of those? Anybody that you're a part of, like with the regional district, the waste commission, you do your own waste?
No, it's run through the regional district, but it's the committee itself is made.
Okay. So let's say you had a commission or some body where there were 3 or 4 local governments working together, like an economic development authority, something like that. See, there we've actually institutionalized you wearing 2 hats. I'll give you an example. In Beaver County, for example, there's multiple parties that have a joint waste commission. Okay, so they're sitting there saying we ought to. And a commission, by the way, the model is more like a private sector. Okay, a commission is intended to make money and give it back to their shareholders, local government. So we're going to up the fees. We're going to up the tipping fees. As a business, we're going to make sure we're generating 100% plus capital reclaim and blah blah blah. So that council goes back to their own council, which has a mandate to make affordable, make life more affordable in their community. So you can see, here they were supposed to wear one hat as a commissioner, and here they're wearing a different hat. It's no wonder we make it confusing sometimes. We force them to wear two hats. So when you go to the regional district, we actually force you to wear two different hats. Right? Over here, they could be doing something that's totally contrary to and so many mayors and electoral area people have been pulled back. They've been withdrawn. They've been not selected to be the regional district people because they weren't representing the view of the municipality in going to that. Some examples. Okay, so I think lunch is here. We'll grab lunch, come back. Admin is really easy. If we understand political, it takes a little bit of time. Okay, let me rephrase. Covering the administrative realm shouldn't be too hard to do. Not that administration's easy. And then we'll wrap it up with the interface. And I think we're in good shape. We should be able to. Where I'd like to be is by this afternoon. We got our hit list. Before we leave this afternoon, we got our hit list of topics that we think are the top items to discuss tomorrow. So I think we're in good shape for that. Okay. So quarter after, quarter two. Does that sound okay? Good. Okay.